Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by two fine co-hosts, plus a guest.
Laura Dash.
Shane Kelly.
And introducing great friend of the show, Jason McIntosh. If you're on our patrons-only Discord, you may know him by other names. He is here joining us in his capacity as a Steam Deck enthusiast today. You may have listened to his podcast, Venthuffer, a audio-zine about the Steam Deck. Jason, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Raygan. I'm super happy to be here.
And that's kind of the topic this week. We are going to talk about the Steam Deck. We've done this once before. We did kind of a topic-y episode, but I think that was like right after I got the Steam Deck, which I did pretty much day one. And I don't remember what we said, so apologies if we retread anything there. But really, the Steam Deck has been out and has become, at least for me, and I think for a lot of us on the show and in the short game community, kind of the main way I play games these days. Mm-hmm. At least one of the big ones. And there've been some interesting developments recently. And we just sort of thought with a topic-y episode like this, we might revisit that and talk a little bit about where the Steam Deck is today and what's going on with it and where it is in our lives and all that.
And the biggest development is I have one now. Yes, I've inherited Raygan's hand-me-down as he upgraded. Fans of the show who are longtime listeners will know that I'm a slow adopter, not because I'm not excited, but because I live in a small place and we try to limit the number of consoles that are actively in. For example, I wasn't allowed by myself or my husband to buy a Steam Deck till after the wedding for fears I would stop planning the wedding, which was probably a good idea. I sunk a lot of time into Odyssey and Breath of the Wild the second I got my hands on it. But Steam Deck was similar. It would have been a quality of life improvement. But at the time, I knew the DS was heavy and I had like hand trouble on that one. I wasn't sure if the console was going to work for my life. Then my co-host used it. And the number of times I heard, oh, yeah, we played it on the Steam Deck, I got really jealous. Mm-hmm. And luckily, Raygan came through. So I didn't have to technically buy it. It was inherited. The best way to do it. The show
made a Steam Deck happen.
Me to have one.
Yeah. And Jason, like, I think you were a relatively recent adopter, right? Like, when did you buy your Steam Deck, or like, what is that in your life?
It's interesting that that you have that perception, because I don't think I was talking much about it until relatively recently. But actually, I got mine at the end of 2022. Like, it was a Christmas present to myself. But I didn't really start seriously exploring it until like the top of 2024, I'd say. And yeah, I don't think I would have described myself as an enthusiast until relatively recently. So yeah, it tracks.
Yeah. So what do we start with? Because this is a big topic. The Steam Deck is, how do you introduce it? It is a handheld game. People know this already. It's been around a while. It's a handheld gaming PC from Valve directly. It is one of the first hardware products they've made that has really hit. So Valve has had a kind of a long history of like weird moonshot projects. You can look at like the whole PC VR scene, and they had the sort of Valve Index like headsets as a hardware project that was like semi-successful, but never reached a mass market because it's so goddamn expensive and impractical, and it's a VR thing, and that's never going to be mass market, but that's a different conversation. They had their attempt at Steam machines many years ago with their like attempt to move into the home console space by working with like Alienware to put out Linux-based home PCs. And I think they learned a lot from that failure and came back later with the Steam Deck.
And so I have that controller somewhere in the house.
Oh, yeah. Also,
you have massive... Laura, do you have the weird Steam controller?
Oh, I bought the weird Steam controller. That might be why I started getting in console jail, because I bought the Steam controller and it was like, why did you do this? I was like, I wanted to see how it worked. I was excited about the touchpad. It was fine. The balance was bad. The weight of it was really odd. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel uncomfortable, but it felt like tilted in a way that felt really unpleasant to use. So although all the clickies and all the tactic, the haptic bits of it worked very well. The physical balance of the device was off, and it made me like have a really unhappy response to playing with it. So I think
you gave it to me. It's in my drawer.
Yeah, I was going to say I gave it away.
Yeah,
so
I
rumor
still
has
have
it there's going to be a new one. I don't know if you guys have followed this. I've seen very convincing rumors that the new Steam controller will basically be a Steam Deck with the screen taken out and smushed in. Which
fix the weight distribution, and that thing was great except for the weight distribution in my eyes.
I think that's
and the Steam Deck does not have that weight distribution problem.
It's got a lot of weight,
pretty well done.
Yeah, it's just all weight. It's just all
it's so heavy.
It's all weight, no distribution.
Yeah. So I guess one sort of way to talk about this is like, what do you play on your Steam Deck? Like, what sort of games work on the Steam Deck? I think when the Steam Deck first came out, people had this conversation a lot because people were like, what can you play on the Steam Deck? But I don't know. For me, it's like practically everything. But like, where does the Steam Deck fall in your sort of overall gaming stuff? What do you play on the Steam Deck versus other platforms?
I just woke my Steam Deck to see like what's most recent in my library, and of course I did not go to my library. I woke it up from sleep and immediately launched right into UFO 50.
Yep, that's what I'm playing on it.
It's really one of the most perfect Steam Deck sized games or collection of games or sub Steam library in its own right. So that's the obvious answer. It's not the one I was looking for when I turned on my Steam Deck, but it slapped me in the face. So it's got that going on. In that, oh my gosh, no, this isn't the first mention of UFO 50 on the show, right? It's come up before.
I mean, I'm sure it's come up, but we have never done an episode on it.
We had to kind of stop and look at UFO 50 very carefully, because if we went in on UFO 50, we would have to cover it for an entire, like, it would take us forever to properly cover UFO 50. And others are kind of doing that. Very, very big podcasts are going really deep on it. I would love any thoughts you have on how we might bring kind of value to that discussion. I really want to spend time with UFO 50. It's kind of tough to carve out a chunk of our schedule for something this gigantic, but also many little tiny small pieces.
Yeah, for those who are unfamiliar, UFO 50 is 50 different games together, and any one of them could get short game coverage. That's been the problem why we haven't covered it, is because it's a bundle of games. There are meta elements, but they're also individually, we could do a full episode on any of them, and we might in the future. But right now, the reason I'm going to UFO 50 is selfish. It's I don't think the games would play super well on my Mac. I mean, they would, but I'd probably have to use parallels, or I'd have to use a controller. And that's just a level of friction I don't want, versus just opening it up and I'm playing it within 5 minutes. Like, that's the sweet spot for me. And that's what I'm using it to play PC games, or games that have some kind of controller, some kind of friction to me playing them on a desktop easily. I'm not playing Stardew Valley on it. Like that, desktop is fine. I like listening to a podcast and farming. I don't need a Steam Deck for that. But there are a lot of other games that have some kind of hindrance to playing it on a PC that the Steam Deck just eliminates.
Mm-hmm. Would you say games that have a literal pick up and play nature?
Yes, 100%.
That's what this is for.
Parking Garage Rally, perfect. Oh. Yeah.
I think the key thing that made the Steam Deck work for me was that Valve worked all the kinks out of suspending a game and then resuming it later. And this is something that Windows PCs just have never accomplished. Like, theoretically, you can like close a Windows laptop that is playing a game and open it again later. But like 90% of the time, you're going to run into a crash, or the game is going to be like weird resolutioned, or there's some other weird problem. Games just on Windows, I don't know what the issue is, but it just doesn't like to suspend and resume. Whereas the Steam Deck, like any console, at least any console since like the PS4, you just hit a button and it sleeps, and then you hit the button again and it comes back on exactly where you were. And for me as a dad, that has been clutch, because it's like I can start playing a game, and if suddenly a child demands my full attention, I can turn the Steam Deck off and chuck it across the room, and instantaneously I am, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry that. And this is like I get this weird angst when I like leave a game, even if I like on an actual gaming PC. If I like walk away from a game and the Steam clock is still ticking and the game is still running, I just get weird anxiety about it until I go and close it. I don't know why that is. It's just the way my brain works.
That's also short game timer anxiety, where someone's going to ask you how long you played the game, and you can't answer if you leave that timer running.
Yeah, I have to be very careful about that because we try to report on that. Like, how long was this game for you? So the Steam Deck keeps track of how long I've been playing a game better than anything else I've ever used.
I love that we're agreeing that a primary attribute of this system that makes it so attractive is how it lets you stop playing. And that's literally true. Like, I absolutely agree with that too. And that's one of the reasons why there are 2 Steam Decks in the house now, because you can have multiple accounts on your Steam Deck because it's pretending to be it is a console, but it's like it pushes out there all the console features that you'd expect on like a PlayStation or whatnot, even if they don't fit very well. One of these is multiple accounts. It'll do it. It's awkward about it. And it takes a long time to switch over from one person to another. For example, yourself and your spouse, in my case. And we were switching over so much, and the wait is so long and both of us were denied this fast sleep and wake feature that I just bought us another one for Christmas. And now we can both suspend our games as much as we want, and she can play Midnight Suns, and I can play Road Warden, and there's no conflict. Well, not from the video games.
That's definitely a downside right now with a split household as well. But I will say the family sharing is light years better on the Steam Deck than it is on PC. PC like acts like you're doing something horrible and illegal when you're downloading a game from your spouse's library. Steam Deck, it's just there with your games. It treats all the games as the same. Like, the family sharing is great. The account sharing, it shuts down Steam entirely and restarts it. So that's pain in the butt. But the family sharing, night and day. I don't understand why it's so bad on the desktop.
That's so weird. I've never really had to mess with that.
Sorry, they recently redid how family sharing works. And I haven't really fully set it back up after the change. When it changed up, I had kind of disabled it in preparation to mess with it, and lost access to all of my purloined games from Raygan's library. So if anyone knows how that is meant to work now, I would like to hear about it. So I think I have a little bit of a different use of the Steam Deck than you guys. So in terms of what games, this made me go back and look at what are my most recent played games. Almost all of my most recent played games are games that I play with my kid, and we play docked. We play with the Steam Deck in the dock all the time. So it might as well not have a handheld mode for like 90% of what I do with it. And it might as well also just be like a Castle Crashers console.
That hasn't quite been the case for me, but I've definitely started in that direction lately too. Like, we're playing through. Shane recommended we talked maybe about doing an episode on this. Probably won't, but we've been playing through Cat Quest 2. There's a third one out now, but these are like kids' first action RPG. But it's amazing. It's like the first game that's like really 100% clicked with my kids. They get it immediately, and it's got really smart co-op, so I can play with them, and it works really, really well. So shout out to Cat Quest 2, which I think we got for like $3 on the Steam sale, because it's not a new game, but highly recommended if you have little folks who are struggling with maybe more complex games. It's like dead easy, but it's also not super boring.
Yeah, I mean, the quote unquote real answer is it's for playing PC games, so I don't have to use parallels.
Yeah,
that's the short answer. I'm not going to do something that's keyboard or mouse centric on it. I'm not going to. I don't want to square a circle, but there's a ton of stuff that's just a little bit of a pain in the ass, and that's what Steam Deck is for. Also, it's for playing a game curled up on the couch, like that you don't want it to take over the living room, which sometimes the computer does. It's a little bit less it's more intimate gaming for me than, say, like playing on a computer. For example, I'm very happy I played Immortality on my computer because I loved seeing the film as big as I could, but I had to like hide it from my spouse because he wanted to play it himself and I didn't want to spoil it. That would have been a good Steam Deck scenario of like, oh, he's in the room, I'll switch to the Steam Deck and this will be a little bit more private. Like that's kind of what it feels to me is for that. I'm really enjoying it. I just got a pop up that my husband is currently playing UFO 50 in the other room on the Steam Deck.
So Laura, something you said there kind of reminded me, I wanted to ask, so about games that you can and can't play on it, like what feels good and what doesn't. Like one of the things that, like, if you look at the Steam Deck, it doesn't look like other handhelds or controllers. And one of the big obvious things about it is it has these two gigantic square touchpads right on the front. One of the big things people talked about when the Steam Deck came out is like, well, what are these for? Are people going to use them? And here we are, years later. So maybe we can answer that question. Valve's idea there was trying to bring as much as possible of the Steam library to the handheld. And that would include, hopefully, games that didn't include native controller support. So they've got the Steam input system where you can map everything you want and people can share controller mappings. But also the touchpads are meant to kind of bridge that gap for things that you can't do on a touch screen or might not want to. So who's using this? Is anybody using the touchpads and what for?
Yeah, I've been most recently, since I already mentioned it, using them with Road Warden, which I started over the new year. And that is a game that I think the compatibility mode on Steam Deck is the yellow I, the letter I, not the eyeball, which means it doesn't not work. It doesn't have, I think for the selections, it doesn't have D-pad controller support at all or joystick support at all. It wants you to use a mouse, right? And I had to do a little bit of remapping to make the right trigger work as left mouse click. But then it's quite comfortable to play with the right thumb pad as the mouse and squeezing the trigger for a click. And it more or less works. And I played similarly with both of the Golden Idol games on Steam Deck.
For me, it's sort of the emergency option. If I'm playing, PC games are full of these little gotchas where like, oh, it's popped up a login prompt or something, and you need to bypass it. And sometimes the touchscreen isn't very good for that. And so I will, and this is especially, I do a lot of game streaming. I've talked about this before. The Steam Deck is great for streaming games from other devices, like from my desktop PC, but sometimes something gets minimized or whatever, and you need a mouse. And so it's really nice to have that as just sort of like oops, something's wrong and I need a mouse right away option that, I don't have to like go hunt for one or change into a different mode or try to make the touchscreen work for that. So pretty much just that, honestly. Although I will say, we'll talk maybe about some of this later, but like I use a retro gaming interface thing on there called Retro Deck, and they've done some incredible stuff with the touchpads. Retro Deck does this. This is apparently a Steam input feature that I guess just nobody's using, maybe some MMO players or something, but people who do the like Steam input, like create their own mappings, can create these little touchpad menus that have icons and whatever. And they like, you put your finger on the touchpad and it pops up an on-screen radial menu, and they can have multiple layers and whatnot. And it's amazing in this retro gaming scenario where like, I don't need to remember what key combo do I hit to do like a save state or whatever. I just put my finger somewhere on the touchpad and it pops up a radial menu with multiple different options, and I can just instantly do what I wanted. So like they're really great for those sorts of like utility things. I have never used them for like first person shooters or for like instead of an analog stick. There's definitely people out there that do that, but I don't really get it. I'm more of a controller person anyway, but they're really nice to have in a pinch.
Can I say it's interesting to compare with Nintendo on this, because Nintendo packed all sorts of weird stuff into their Joy-Cons, and it looks like they're about to pack even more weird stuff in the Joy-Con 2. But they barely even support the touchscreen that is built into the Switch. If you play Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, you can't even manipulate the menus with the touchscreen. It's bizarre.
That is a little weird. Although I do wish there was an option to disable the touchscreen on the Steam Deck, because constantly my 2-year-old is coming over and just like fat fingering my screen while I'm playing like, Metaphor Refantasio, and somehow he manages to like unequip my weapon. I'm like, damn it, how did you do that in one swipe? Yeah.
My first thing I tried on the Steam Deck, just because I wanted to try controls, was Balatro, and I think I had to use it to like reorder Jokers. Like there's occasionally going to be something that you cannot figure out how to do, and you got to use that mouse. But it was a good training wheel for me. I tried to talk about this work, by the way, and I was like, "Hey, I got a Steam Deck. How are people liking your Steam Decks?" And everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" "Oh, you have one. Why?" like they don't know about it. It's strange. Like it seems pretty popular, but it does not seem widely known.
Yeah, when I have brought it places, like I mentioned, I was playing with my nephews. I would bring it to family gatherings and plug it into a TV. No one knows what this thing is. They are asking me, "Is that a Nintendo? Is that a Game Boy?"
Yes, has anyone besides me had TSA ask that? Is this a Nintendo Switch? I'm like, yeah.
Sort of.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes,
sure.
officer.
For our purposes today. Every single time I've traveled with the thing, I've had to get it out of my bag. I haven't really had anybody like grill me about it, but it's definitely like, it's more of like a laptop in that way. Like they really want to look at it. They don't want to leave it in the bag. I think it might just have to do with the size of the battery. Doesn't look great on an X-ray, I guess.
I don't know how much I'm going to travel with it. It seems a little big, but that it'll depend on how long I'm going and if I have a deadline for the podcast, I guess.
Yeah. How are we traveling with the Steam Deck?
I've been using, so one reason I am envious of the white Steam Deck, which I don't know if any of you have this or not.
Oh,
yes, you do.
I have it. Because that's why I have one now.
But I think that comes with the like extra slim case, or the case that you can take out of the case. And it's like, ooh, fancy. But I've been going ahead and using the big fat quarter pounder turtle shell thing that it ships with, which I wasn't expecting when I bought my first one. That was kind of delightful. And I've been shoving that in my messenger bag when I am traveling for more than a little while anywhere, and usually don't regret it. It's too big and cumbersome to like take out at the airport or on the airplane, because you're like, whoop, it's giant. But as a personal entertainment device in a hotel or at my in-laws' place or wherever, I like to have that. And it has been accompanying me on my trips for the last year or two, honestly.
I have found I've tried all sorts of things. I've had a few different cases for the Steam Deck. I really did not like the case that it came with, although like it really is nice that they included one, and it is an extremely protective case, and it's smart that they sort of made that the packaging. Cool idea. Glad Valve did that. Works pretty well. But it is so large. It takes up so much space in like a backpack. I ended up buying this they've had newer versions of it now, but it's like a messenger bag that's like Steam Deck specific. It's like from TomTalk. It's more sort of like a very large, I don't know what you call those sort of like crossbody, like fanny pack type deals, rather than like a true messenger bag. But I love that thing for traveling. It's amazing because it's like, it's just just small enough that I feel like, well, this is my little, like I'll put my, my ID and my stuff for traveling in there. But really it's so I have the Steam Deck on the plane more easily. And, I really like that, but I've also been like same deal. Like when I travel for work, I used to always bring my iPad for things like maybe I want to watch a movie on the plane or whatever. And weirdly enough, even though I'm bringing a laptop now, I put that on the Steam Deck. Like we'll talk in a minute, I guess, about like some non-computery stuff. But like what I'll do is I'll just boot into the desktop mode, grab some video files. It's so much easier than any like app crap that I used to do to have like movies ready to go on my Steam Deck or on my like iPad. Now it's just like, hey, it's a folder. I can grab the file from my NAS, boom, done, and I can just play it. And it's very simple. So yeah, there's a lot of like little computer stuff like that I keep using it for. in addition to just being a gaming device.
Yeah. My husband and I are really codependent when we travel and we watch movies together on flights. We have a little headphone splitter and we like discuss all the movies we're going to watch in advance. And like, that's a huge
Sickening.
Part of traveling. We're like people next to us routinely comment on like, oh, this is a thing you clearly do every time you fly.
I'm commenting right now. This is amazing. I need to get in on this. Wow.
It's great, actually. People sometimes get really excited about what we're watching. We watched Wildlife, Life and Death, and people are like, ooh, is that Stairway to Heaven? I was like, yes, it is. Justin said, why do you lie to that woman? I said, oh, that's the British name of the movie.
Oh.
I was like, Matter of Life and Death is the United States title.
Okay.
I was like, don't worry about it. I didn't lie to a woman on an airplane. But I think if I'm solo traveling, definitely Steam Deck. I think right now, because the iPad is for like joint viewing, biggest screen possible to share it, I don't think I'm going to do the file. But I'm intrigued for solo traveling because when I travel for work, I have to have like you have that 2 laptop problem of you have the work laptop and your personal one. And I would like to drop a device. And maybe I drop the home laptop and bring the Steam Deck instead.
I assure you, I do not do this in public or where anyone can see me, but I have used the Steam Deck held vertically to read manga, and that works really well. It's totally fine. It's about the size of a manga page. Better than my phone. But yeah, like maybe we jump to that. Like what the Steam Deck being a PC, being like a full on PC, there are so many different computery things that you can do with it. And I've found myself doing all sorts of random stuff with it. It's not quite like the versatility of a laptop, but it's not far off. So I wondered if anybody had any other like things that you might have done with your Steam Deck that maybe don't fall like straight down the middle of like buy game from Valve, play game on thing.
I've been using it to mess up my games. Like that's kind of straddling both worlds there. Looking at my own library, the most recent game I've played that other than UFO 50 is Lethal Company, which was my introduction to the entire world of PC game modding, which there's a whole Venthuffer episode about, and I don't need to get into it here. Venthuffer.com, everybody.
We'll have links in the description. It's a great podcast.
Thank you very much. But yeah, I mean, that all started because some friends of mine were like, have you played this game, Lethal Company? You have a PC, right? I'm like, kind of. But in order to play with them, I had to install this mod, and I had until this time. And so this was like almost 2 years into Steam Deck ownership for me. And I remember saying in the Short Game Discord, I was grumpy about it when I first got it. Like I was prematurely defensively grumpy about the fact I will never mess with this. I am scared of it. I know I can drop into desktop mode, but I that smells weird. And I don't want to do anything that will break my games in some way that I don't want to brick my device. None of that's for me. 2 years later, I just Googled like, how do I install More Company on Steam Deck? And, folks are like, here's how you install More Company on Steam Deck. And it involves dropping into desktop mode, getting this thing, getting this other thing. And, I can run a Linux terminal, and I was able to like install a web browser and just roll forward from there. And that, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's doable. And if you can like step through a readme.txt file, you can do this. And it immediately made clear to me, oh, this really is a PC with gaming controllers, integrated into the hardware, and running an OS that's just Arch Linux, except it has all these weird Valve-specific mutations. But also, it's just Arch Linux. The desktop is just KDE Plasma. None of which I knew before a couple of months ago, because I really like dove in on it. And I'm like, what am I even looking at? Like, what is this Linux desktop? I have not run. It has never been the year of Linux on the desktop for me. So I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Or is every year the year of Linux on the desktop? Even more than the last year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that gets into part of it too. Like the other major thing I've been doing that's computery is just like catching up on desktop Linux, because that's literally what desktop mode is. It is not a special Valve version. It is KDE Plasma, except that they've replaced a couple of the logos with Steam Deck logos, and they very prominently put in the upper left corner of the screen, so you can't miss it, a giant Steam Deck logo that says "Return to Gaming Mode." It's an alias. So if you're like, where am I? It's like, just click here, kid. You're fine. You're fine. Also, if you reboot the system, it goes back into gaming mode. There's no reason to panic. But yeah, the fact that you can just, if you want to, and the game, it's not, you're not hacking the system. There is a drop to desktop mode option right in the power menu. It's not hidden. They don't advertise it, but also it's not hidden. You're suddenly in a computery mode. Everything's computery, and you can just download weird stuff off the internet and install it. And your game console isn't like, oh, that's the internet. I wouldn't do that if I was you. It's like, sure, there you go, boss. What's next? And you can open up the file browser and put weird DLLs into a folder next to your exe file for your game. And this README file is like, no, that's what you want to do. It's fine. It's cool. And you're like, I believe you, random person on the internet who wrote a README. And that's how I was able to play Lethal Company with 7 friends at the same time, even though it's a 4-player game. Because you can,
that's cool.
Yeah, and it's you can mess up your games and play them in ways that the original designers did not intend, because it's just a PC. It's just a PC with a console-shaped chassis lowered over it, but you can pop the hood. And the fact that Valve does not hide the fact that you can just open the hood and tinker it is honestly, that was the turning point for me, from like thinking this is a cool little gaming device to like kind of saying this is the best one, I think. Just that level of trust for the, we could say consumer, we can say the user, from the manufacturer is rare in today's consumer electronics or computing environment. So I think that's super cool. And yeah, doing bizarre, unauthorized computery things on my game console is the computer stuff I've been doing.
I think that's really tied to the philosophy, not just of the software, but the hardware too. The hardware is uniquely repairable. We're in an era where like opening your hardware tends to require specialty screws and a willingness to never receive proper service again. But you know, I've had to look at things like the iFixit page on replacing buttons and things like that. I have a young man in my household who has thankfully exited a controller chewing phase. And so I preemptively looked at the process for like replacing some of the thumbsticks and things like that on the Steam Deck when I was first allowing him to use it to play Castle Crashers. And it, you know, like $13 for a part and like an hour with a screwdriver and you're good. So I think that's really wonderful.
There's a lot of other things that I've been doing with the Steam Deck that are like, you know, computery, but just to echo what Jason was saying about mods, like this is something that I never really did a lot of on PC. I'd certainly I downloaded some Skyrim mods, not those ones, that sort of thing, but I never really felt like the power.
What mods, Raygan?
Oh yeah, you definitely installed that Big Naturals Velatro mod.
Yeah, baby.
For listeners, that's actually a pretty clean mod. It does put boobs on all the jokers, but it's pretty clean and it's done very well. So
funny.
I appreciate the Big Naturals mod.
If you want Big Naturals on all the jokers in Balatro, the Steam Deck is here for you. But like one specific, the one that was pretty recent for me that like blew my mind is that there is one of my all-time favorite games is, and I'm going to hold it up to the camera, Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast. This is an incredible Sega arcade racing game. It used to be on Steam, but it was delisted years ago because it includes a bunch of Ferrari licenses and those expired. But also it was designed to run on probably Windows Vista. It's just not a good game on modern systems, even if you happen to acquire a copy, which I have done so. You can see legit right here. There's a DVD in here.
You probably stole it.
You can download this game from the Internet Archive as well. Like it's like well out of print. Like you're not harming anybody. But there's also a project where you can, they like enthusiast people who love this game have fixed it up. They've modded and hacked it in all sorts of different ways to make it no longer be stuck in 4:3 mode. It'll run in 16:9. It'll run at any resolution. It'll run at frame rates above 30. They've higher resolution textures and models and all sorts of improvements. The Steam Deck like Rumble feature works with it. Like incredible stuff.
Oh, right.
And they've re-implemented the now defunct online services. And so if you install this, you get to compare scores and whatnot with like real people online again for the first time in like whatever, a decade plus. So that kind of stuff that blows my mind. And the other thing about this is like all this sort of unofficial stuff. It can just be there in the gaming mode. You can spend 15 minutes installing this crap and then add it to Steam. And then it's just there alongside all of your other games in a way that like, there's like, even if there was like some way to like, jailbreak a Nintendo Switch, which I'm sure there are. I'm not a big expert. I know there's lots of ways to do that. But like, if you could jailbreak your Nintendo Switch, you're in a different mode. You're not going to just like have a game alongside all your other games and it's no big deal. But here it's just, you do your thing in the desktop mode and you can bring it with you back into that console experience. You can mod that game and it's still there and you don't have to do some wacky launcher. It's awesome.
I don't know what compelled me. I think something in the air around Christmas made me think within 12 hours of getting the Steam Deck that I was going to add a new intro animation to this boot up. So I went and found one, dropped the file on. I wanted a use case for trying out the desktop. And because I was at a Airbnb, I used the little mouse button to move everything through the file explorer. Do not recommend. Use your Bluetooth mouse, children. It was not fun to do it by hand. Dropped it in, and then it worked really well for 5 or 6 boot ups, and then it started verifying installation every time I switched accounts. And it always passed verification, but it added another 30 seconds to a minute to every time I turned the thing on.
Yeah.
So I went back in and deleted my startup animation because I did not want the extra 1 minute. So I think I'm going to avoid using the computer unless I have peripherals handy, like a external keyboard or a mouse, just because of that. But or if I'm doing something intricate, this was going into a lot of nested hidden folders and putting a file in it, and it was kind of annoying. It was beautiful. It was a history of handhelds animation, so it would kind of show up. So it would show all the little handhelds moving through, and then it ended on the Steam Deck. Delightful. Loved
the end of
looking at
history.
it.
The final handheld.
The final handheld. The epitome of handhelds. After 24-hour and like 3 or 4 account switchers, I went and deleted that because it was annoying. But
listeners, if you know how to fix that, hit us up.
Yeah, if you can install a startup animation without having them verify installation, I would love it because I thought it was adorable.
That was originally something you'd only be able to do as like a little hacky thing like that, but they actually added a thing where you can buy startup animations using their points system via Valve's thing.
I can buy one. I just wanted to. The one on the internet was cuter.
Yeah.
Right when the Steam Deck came out, I remember someone posting that they had seen the hack of adding a startup animation, and the video file they reached for was the entire animated film Shrek. And they put that as their startup animation and then had to go for help online because they could not start up their Steam Deck and get to any interface at all without watching the entire movie Shrek.
It says on the site, we recommend you use under 30-second startup animations. It's like, who's waiting 30 seconds for a startup animation? No, thank you. Shrek is a bit much.
Good prank, though. I'm just going to quickly mention a couple other things I've done in that mode before we get off this topic. I really like that I'm able to install things like 1Password on this thing. It's a really small thing, but like if I go to like switch into the desktop mode, like I have my regular browser there. Like I use Firefox, but like you can install whatever browser you want. You can install all of your stuff. Like I've got 1Password so I can log into Netflix on the thing without having it be a huge pain in the butt. It's just like a laptop. And I use it to watch video. There's a lot of different ways to like get files on and off of the thing. You can install pretty much any of your various different like file syncing utilities, at least if it has a Linux version, which many of them do. I use something called Sync Thing, which works really, really well for me. And they have a mode where you can put that into where it will sync in the background, even in game mode, which is pretty cool. There's let's see. Oh, and the real clutch thing that I used it for a lot a few months ago was I had a crazy problem with my router, and for whatever reason, the Steam Deck happened to be the handiest thing. It's really useful as a network tester because I just plugged a little like Ethernet dongle into it, and I could instantly tell like, is it up or not without having a whole laptop set up. And I was like, I can carry it around with me. It's super useful for weird little stuff like that. Or, I mean, Wi-Fi. Like I was able to walk around the house and test Wi-Fi signal in different rooms. Not like, not that you can't do that with other devices, but the Steam Deck is actually pretty good for that kind of little computer stuff where you're not like need a whole big thing. So, Oh, and one other app recommendation, Ludo Savi. This is available on the Discover store. You can download it in desktop mode. It is a save game backup manager. The Steam Deck has Steam Cloud, which has gotten very good, and most recent Steam games support syncing your saves to the cloud, which is great. But there are games that don't support that. Or there might be situations where you want to back up a save game, and that's always kind of a frustrating thing to figure out, like, where are the files? Ludo Savi is a GUI that will scan all of your games, find where the saves are, and you can just have it do things like do a regular routine backup and copy them into a folder and keep versioned backups of your save games and restore them individually or all together and move them to a new machine, that kind of thing. It's really great. So lots of little stuff like that you don't think of, even if you're used to PC gaming.
Sounds like a great tool for save scumming Caves of Cud, which I'm always looking for new strats for save scumming Caves of Cud. Before we talk about Caves of Cud and my obsession with it, something you brought up, Laura, and still on the topic of computery things, is I definitely recommend, when you can get away with it, connecting when you're going to use it in desktop mode, connecting your Steam Deck to peripherals, including an external display, keyboard, and mouse. It is so much more comfortable to use than using it in trying to SSH on your iPhone, like squinting at the little screen and tapping at the on-screen keyboard. And that reminds me, I was thinking, one thing I love about when I am using in keyboard mode, I have this ancient Apple Bluetooth keyboard that I've had. This is probably the oldest working piece of kit I have right now. And that reminds me in turn that unlike every game console, the Steam Deck is very open about what you connect to it. And even though there is technically, because we mentioned it earlier, a Steam controller, you don't have to buy 6 of them in order to play this with your friends, unlike literally every other game console. In fact, it encourages you to connect your PS4 controller to it. And when you do, it puts a little PlayStation logo on the OS screen in gaming mode when it prompts you to hit the home button to do something. There's the little PS logos right there. It is adorable, and it is so friendly. And when I invite a friend over to play a couch co-op game, I'm like, literally bring your favorite Bluetooth controller over because it will work. And that is fantastic and amazing, and I love that.
Yeah, that's really clutch. It's incredible, how versatile it is about different inputs. And I have a huge collection of controllers. I'm kind of I need to stop, and someone needs to stop me. But I just have so many controllers, and all of them work on it. And I've used tons of them. I have a 8BitDo Saturn style controller. I was playing one of I forget which brawler it was. Probably Fight and Rage recently, and I was like, this would be better on a Saturn pad. 10 seconds later, I was playing it on a Saturn pad.
That's so
it was
cool.
Perfect. And I've got just an absolute ton of Xbox controllers strewn around the house, and all of them work with the Steam Deck just fine, and it's super easy. That's not something people think about, but it's incredible to be able to just use whatever controller you want.
Random thing, but I'll throw it out since we're talking about controllers. Xbox controllers, all of them that I have tried this with, need to be connected to a PC or Xbox to update their firmware before they will work with the Steam Deck.
Yeah, I've had that problem too. Yeah, it's they all shipped in 2018 with a firmware that doesn't include proper Bluetooth something. So, but yeah, they all work once you do that. Works great. Let's see. I had stuck this thing in the doc, which really is just a, hey, what do you know? But I was reading something on it was on PC Gamer earlier today. And I've been kind of wondering, like, what is the Steam Deck doing to the PC gaming like world? And we don't get a whole lot of great statistics or whatever out of this. Actually, Valve is more open than most companies. They do publish things like their hardware surveys and things like that, where you can find out, like, 75% of people on Steam are using the oldest shit imaginable. That kind of like survey data is kind of interesting to see. But out of GDC, the most recent GDC, they had a survey of all of the game developers who attended GDC. And apologies if I just read some of this. This is from the middle of an article, but it said the percentage of developers making games for PC has been tracking upwards for years. 56% of developers said they were making games for PC in 2020. A figure that rose to 58% in 2021, 63% in 2022, and 65% in 2023. Interest in developing for PC is also way up, reaching 74% of respondents in the survey, a big jump from 62% last year. And this is a quote: "The exact reason for this jump is unclear, but it could be connected to the rising popularity of Valve's Steam Deck," the GDC report says. This year's survey didn't single out Steam, or Valve's handheld gaming computer as its own platform, because it is a hub for PC and Mac games. But it appears some developers do view it as a unique platform. For instance, when asked to name other platforms that interest them, almost half, 44%, wrote in Steam Deck. The Steam Deck has been very popular with developers, and many games have started building in a Steam Deck profile or auto-detecting that they're running on a Steam Deck and having special graphics settings that have been tuned in a console-like way to make sure that the game runs well on the Steam Deck. Even fancy, high-end PC games that I'm down, like Metaphor ReFantazio, I keep bringing it up. It's the thing I'm playing most on my Steam Deck right now. Super good-looking game. Play it on the desktop, looks incredible. Also looks fine on the Steam Deck, and I'm certain that they've tuned it, because like the Steam Deck is not a powerful machine. It's not bad, but it's nothing compared to my desktop, which is several years old. But games run on it, and they run fine, and it's because Valve made some very smart considerations, things like not having a very high resolution screen, and developers are continuing to look at the Steam Deck when they're considering how to tune their games and release them, and I love that.
So this is very timely with the Switch 2 discussion. For people who are listening in the future, we've just seen a really obscure trailer for the for the Switch 2. That's all we've seen. And I remember having so many conversations with devs who hated Switch ports. Like, they hate Switch ports so much because the machine is such, it's like an old phone. It's not powerful enough. And being able to do a portable build with like decent hardware specs is night and day. So it's not that developers hate the size of the machine, it's that they hated the how underpowered the Switch was. And I remember how many times we were like, oh, I wish this came out on Switch. I can't wait for this to come out on Switch. I really want a handheld version. And I think developers are hoping that the Steam Deck and, some of the other PC gaming machines are going to overtake that market, or the Switch Deck 2 actually has some juice in it, and it's not going to be quite as hazardous to downgrade your stuff. So I think it's a yes, and I'm hoping the Switch 2 is more powerful and more stuff comes to Switch without it being incredibly expensive to port it, but also it's way easier to get something on the Steam Deck than the Switch. So I can see both. Like, it's a spectrum. For some people, it's a box check. People are doing a little more than that, but looking at the Switch 2 news has really put the Steam Deck in perspective for me. Of like, I forgot. I mean, I worked in the industry. I worked with a lot of people doing Switch ports and porting them to mobile. And again, just the amount of developer complaints about that deck versus Steam Deck, where they were like, "Oh yeah, we're already on Steam Deck, already done." That was an easy sell for them.
And for the types of games that we play for the show, like, so many of those devs they're small devs, maybe even individuals, like little stuff. We play a lot of stuff from like mid-size indie, larger publishers too, but like, we'll play stuff that, like, you can get a game out on Steam for $100. You pay $100 to Valve, and upload your build. And they do, I suppose, some basic checks, but like not much. you're kind of, it is a little bit more like, you're buy at your own risk on Steam than on some other platforms, perhaps. But like that's been a good balance, especially for the kinds of stuff that I play. Like, man, I really like just like, oh, this $3 indie looks cool. Let me download it on my Steam Deck. And that didn't happen so much on the Switch. It, like some cool, weird little indie would come out and be like, I wonder if that'll come out for Switch. And maybe it would 10 months later. Like that was very frustrating. The Steam Deck, just kind of, I almost forgot how much of an issue that was before I had the Steam Deck. Like now it's just like, of course you can play that.
And this is so novel to me because pre-Steam Deck, I really was never into the Windows or DOS gaming world. Like I've always been a Mac person, and like I was an Atari person before that, so I've always been using the weird computer. And another of the transformational moments for me last year, which it was a moment I was going through actually on the Discord, and Jesse, I remember, picked this up and got excited about it too, was going through Achiro Lambe's, and again, there's a Venthuffer episode about this, but there is a wonderful Twitter, now Mastodon, account called Steam Trailers in 6 Seconds, which just picks up, it's a bot that picks up new games that have appeared in the Steam store. And did I say Switch trailers? Steam trailers, sorry.
But I probably spent back and forth saying it too. It's hard.
You called it a Switch Deck a minute ago. We're all over the place.
We're fine.
Steam trailers
we're doing
in 6
great.
seconds. Yes.
It is 11 p.m. almost. So.
Quite. Yep. Oh my gosh. But if you follow this account or you follow other accounts like WF_games as a newsletter, that also just links to like, here are some bizarre indie games that are to a rule like Windows only, because they are just people experimentally smashing these things together and putting them out there. Windows tends to be the platform of choice for doing that. And that's where I discovered a game like Skeleton Rebellion, which is a wonderful, weird, very short, very silly Final Fantasy clone about skeletons overthrowing capitalism. And it is short and stupid, and it has this wonderful claymation animation in it that was clearly done by one person in their spare time with a lot of heart. And were it not for Steam Deck, I would have not paid, again, $2.99 and had a wonderful couple of evenings with that game. So, yeah, that is a whole, not really a genre, not really a vibe, but a whole world of bizarre games that are on Steam. People are publishing them. You can also like get even weirder games on the larger internet, of course, and play them as well. But even if you're just sticking to Steam and just sticking to gaming mode, you can discover wonderful stuff that I can guarantee you Skeleton Rebellion will never appear on Switch. It won't even appear on Switch 2. It is not a question of hardware power. It's just a question of this game is too weird. I'm sorry. But I was able to spend $3 and play it. And I thank the Steam Deck for that opportunity.
For sure. It does feel a little bit weird to be like so hail corporate about Valve. I was very skeptical of Valve as a company, even a few, like literally like just before the Steam Deck. Like I went through a phase where I was like, man, I'm really deep in this Valve ecosystem and maybe I shouldn't be. Let me try buying more games on GOG. Let me try buying more games, like try the Epic store, like, see if I can figure out like a launcher where I can bring these things together without being so tied to Steam and its interface and its store and its whatever as a platform. And that is out the window for me. And part of it is just that like the Steam Deck is so good that it wins, right? It wins in every category. Like there's just nothing like it. There's no way, like I will pay $5 more for a game on Steam than on GOG if it will just be part of my Steam Deck library easily. And like, Steam knew that going in and that's why they had this massive, just mind-boggling moonshot of figuring out how to divorce their business from Microsoft's, starting when Vista came out or when they like first introduced the Microsoft Store and Steam was like, oh God, are they going to put us out of business like Apple put, so many, like, not that it well, they haven't put Mac developers out of business, but like imagine that the Windows PC went the way of the iPhone, Steam and everybody else selling software would have gone out of business or figured out how to be pay a rent to Microsoft. So they put a massive amount of money and time over a decade into figuring out how to divorce their business from Microsoft. And goddamn if they didn't do it. Like, I cannot believe it works. Like, I know, like,
did you hear about what Phil Spencer at Microsoft was saying about the Steam Deck recently?
Mm-mm.
No.
Okay, so this is kind of in the context of we're at a point where the OS, Steam OS, is kind of taking off. At CES we had Lenovo is kind of the big partner right now, and there's something called the Lenovo Legion Go S, which is going to be the first non-Steam or non-Valve handheld to ship with Steam OS. It's basically looks a lot like a Steam Deck. I haven't really dug into the particular specs of it, but it's obviously different. But it's got a 120 hertz screen is one nice thing about it. So it looks interesting. But probably the most interesting thing about it is the fact that it's going to be running SteamOS. And then it was preceded by something called the Lenovo Legion Go. The S is the Steam Deck version. The previous one apparently really won over Phil Spencer. He was saying how it's making him rethink how Windows works. And he said, Steam and Valve and Lenovo are pioneering this new form factor. And it makes him think about all the things that bother him when he's playing games in that experience are Windows things that are things that he feels ownership of. Like, why can I not log into my Windows account with a controller? Things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's shaking up the industry in that way. And I think you could probably expect they're in that phase where they're trying to take Xbox from being a physical box to being, I guess, a subscription service that you can use everywhere. So that's kind of a strange place for the industry to have landed, where people like you and I, Raygan, are all in on hail corporate for Valve, and Microsoft
who
is trying
did
to
us so dirty with Firewatch, and I will never forgive them.
No.
How can we get our Xbox subscription on your handheld, Valve? Kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is just strange because like it took them spending a decade on re-implementing all of the API calls involved in running high-end Windows games in open source, and like God's gift to the Linux community. Like the difference between Linux, divorced from the Steam Deck itself, like I have a laptop here. It's a framework laptop. I like it, but I run Bazite on it, which is basically SteamOS more or less. And like it never occurred to me to want to run Windows on it. I have. It's worse. Like there's so many ways that like the experience of running Linux in general, even not just specifically for gaming, has gotten better specifically because Valve put all this money into trying to create the Steam Deck ultimately, but like it benefiting anybody who touches Linux in any way. I know that's a bit of a weird thing because like who uses Linux on the desktop? But hey, I'm that guy. And like, man, Valve like improved that scene enormously in so many ways. Wow, look at the time. We are here at the end of the hour. But Jason, do you have time to stick around for a little what's making us happy before we round things out?
I would love to.
All right. Well, what's making you happy this week?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. So the first thing I thought of, it'll be a sort of a crossover. It's going to be something video game related that I have already mentioned in the show, but also not video game related directly, which is that several weeks ago, I placed an order for some merch for a game that I've been enjoying very much. And that game is Caves of Cud, which is published by Freehold Games, I believe is the publisher. And I got these stickers, which works great for an audio podcast, but I got, I paid $12, $15 maybe, and I got these 4 sheets of wonderful stickers that have little pixel art on them of the various characters, various catchphrases from the game. And this is part 2. One of the very first things I put them on is this notebook. So one of the core phrases from Caves of Cud that you say to each other as a universal blessing, like live long and prosper, is live and drink. And I've stuck this on the notebook that I'm using right now, which has various stickers from my recent adventures. And this is a notebook I'm extremely happy with. Let's see if I can find the manufacturer of this notebook. I don't know how to pronounce it. Tenoyes, perhaps? TENEUES.NYC, local manufacturer of notebooks. This is a wonderful notebook that has exactly the right size for sticking in a bag. The color of the internal lining of the internal lines is exactly what I want. It is not so bold that it distracts my own writing, but it is also not so light that I cannot use it for aligning my own writing. And the whole thing has this wonderful binding that lays flat, which is my favorite thing about it. So I can flip through it at will for my doodles and my notes, and it always lays flat through some miracle of modern binding that confuses and delights me. And that is what is making me happy.
Very nice. Love a good notebook.
I do too.
I'm also a notebook and putting stickers on notebooks guy, but I'm very fussy about it. I never know what stickers to do, and so I'll put like one sticker on it, and then I'm like, that's done, and then whatever. And then I would come back in like 6 years. But yeah, that's really cool. And I did notice the short game sticker on there.
Oh yes, I didn't. You know what? I honestly forgot it was there, but there you have it. Yes.
Laura, what's making you happy this week?
Before I get into that, I want to say that I have some beautiful notebooks I got in France from Paper Tiger, and they're so pretty that I won't, I don't know what to use these for. I got 4 of them. I've only used one. They are so beautiful. They are A5. I actually went into a store, found out they were cash only, didn't have cash on me, and was so upset the rest of the day that my husband was like, go to an ATM and go back. Go get but that's not what made me happy. We hosted a Lord of the Rings marathon on Sunday, all the extended editions, and we'd never done that before. I don't think I've seen them since.
How long is that altogether?
Oh, it's about 12 hours for the extended editions. Yeah.
Oh,
so there are 30 minutes of credits, because they show every single name of every person in the Lord of the Rings fan club as part of the credits. So you can basically turn the lights on and have a half-hour break between if you just listening to Lord of the Rings music. Well, and you go, how long do I have? And like, oh, we're still in the E's. Yeah, but it's about 12 hours, and it was a full day. And we went hard.
How do you get all your friends to come to a 12-hour anything? Like, my word.
You don't get all your friends. We had 2 people stay the whole day, and then we had a couple people drop in for like a movie and then leave. But we did do 7 Hobbit meals and like themed shots. Like, they're going over the mountains. Here is our Alpine Amaro that we're all going to drink. Or like elderflower sparkling drink because you got to Lothlorien. We had a lot of fun with it. We went a little wild. I made handwritten menus for each of the meals with like traced off the computer fonts that were appropriate to the locations you were at. It was a little bit, we did it very last minute, but we just kept going. Kind of spiraled out of control. But I think it's really fun sometimes to go a little ridiculous on a theme for an adult party. Like, I've done this for like my wedding or like helping with my niece and nephew's birthday party. But it's kind of fun to do something that truly doesn't matter, exclusively to make yourself and your friend, like 2 people happy. We made limbus bread and like wrapped it in because we had leek and potato soup for lunch, and so we had leftover greens from the leeks. We wrapped all the limbus bread in like little packages and handed them out, and like we got really silly with it. And I think, yes, I threw a good party, but what made me happy was like just continuing to be like, and we should have a cheese for each, like a cheese plate for each movie that's themed. Like, we should get ash cheese for Mordor. Like, just keep, like, just stuff that literally we thought was fun. Also, my fridge is stocked all week with delicious hoppity food, which is the best stuff when you work from home. I went to the fridge today and was like, should I snack on blueberries, celery, like hash browns, like all kinds of stuff. So going a little over the top just for you is what's making me happy. Also, I'm really proud of my menus, and I'll post them in the Discord, because I think
that's awesome.
It's also, people are so surprised when you go hard for a party for 6 people. It's a lot of, why are you doing this? And I want to be like, it's January, it's 10 degrees outside, and we don't have children. Like,
good enough reason
to
for
go full Hobbit.
Oh, yeah. Full Hobbit again. All 7 meals plus. We had a. For example, the supper was Smeagol's supper, and it was at the Forbidden Pool because it had been eaten so much. We gave him a little rye bread with a bit of lox on it. And we're just like, here, everyone have a piece of lox on bread. Smeagol is eating a fish in the Forbidden Pool. And everyone just went, fish! Like, everyone just gets so excited, and it's so dumb. We almost had 2 people who'd never seen the movie before join, and I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. It's going to be a weird first-time viewing experience. Also, I don't think you're going to like them. These are my art house movie friends who primarily have taken me to see Italian art films. I was like, I don't know if 12 hours of Lord of the Rings with people who've seen the movie multiple times is the vibe. But they didn't come. They will watch it maybe on their own, maybe never. We'll find out. But
it'll be like your first experience seeing Rocky Horror in the theater, and like everyone's shouting along with it, and you're.
I mean, that was my first experience. Y'all went with me, and I was I don't know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, good times.
Good times. I'm so sad I'm not in New York to experience that with you, Laura. Next time I'll buy a ticket. Tell me. Let's see. So I just recently took a work trip to Austin, and it had me thinking about something that this is like a little making me happy, but and only making me a little happy, but still kind of cool. Like I've been traveling for work often enough now that I've had to like think about like, well, what is my work tech thing? What is my work tech stuff? And I've had a few things that have been like, oh, this like really improves like the experience of like bringing tech along with you on the road. I'm thinking about this partly because of the Steam Deck, and this is a big part of that for me. So I guess kind of 2 things. One is definitely a recommendation. The other one is a little embarrassing. The first is that hotel Wi-Fi is like really suspect, like never great, always a little bit of a hassle. And so I finally invested in something in a portable travel router from GLI Net. It's a Barrel something or other. If you Google it, it's like the one that everyone recommends. Huge game changer. Like, first of all, if there's an Ethernet port somewhere in your room, you just plug into it, and suddenly you have Wi-Fi that might as well be your home Wi-Fi. My phone is already connected to it because I've used it before. My Steam Deck is already connected to it. My laptop is already connected to it, and you're done. And even if not, it has a repeater mode where you can join the hotel Wi-Fi with it and do its little like dance of going through the login prompts and whatever one time, and then everything else is just on. You don't have to do that on every single device you own. And I found everything's faster too, because it's got better radios in it, like for slurping up that hotel Wi-Fi, and then it's right there. You're not like talking to the router that's probably, down the hall in the ceiling or something. So huge improvement. And that, having gotten that, made me think like, should I bring my VR setup with me when I go traveling? Would that be dumb? That's the embarrassing one. But here's the thing. If you're in a hotel, the TV sucks, right? The TV always sucks. And you can't play what you want on it, You can't play your Steam Deck on it or whatever. So this trip, I changed all that, and I brought the the MetaQuest 3 headset with me, and for those times sitting around the hotel room, the streaming works because I have this router right there. I could stream. That's actually I've tried some different stuff. I tried streaming games from the Steam Deck to the headset. That does work, but it wasn't super ideal. I don't love the setup for that. The Steam Deck doesn't work great as a streaming host, but I did watch some movies on it, which was great, much better than the crappy hotel TV. And I have now purchased the dongles and wires required to literally just HDMI into the thing. So the MetaQuest headsets have a mode now where you can do HDMI in if you have an HDMI to USB-C like capture card kind of thing. And I've now messed around with that. And so next time, that's going to be the play. I'm just going to plug my Steam Deck directly into it, and I'm just going to be fully in the Matrix. And I'm kind of excited about it. There's not really
a little
reason.
Ready Player One. You're like in the stacks.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've royally messed with my niece and nephew over Christmas because they both. My nephew got an Oculus for his birthday, and then his sister got one for Christmas, and they were playing together in their room. And then we would just go in and like mess up the stuff in the room, like move the bear or like put a hat on the bear or like put a, move something on the wall while they were both in the Oculus world. And honestly, I've never had more fun messing with children.
It's like the Oculus Quest thing. Like, first of all, I don't love that it's meta. I don't love having to put a Zuck goggles on my face. So there's that aspect of it. And also, it's just embarrassing, but it's cool. It makes me think like, in a few years when Apple has a version of this that is usable and purchasable by normal humans.
And not $7,000.
Yeah. Like, it's actually a thing that I would want. And I'm actually using it pretty often. Like, I'll stream from my gaming PC to the headset pretty frequently. There, even when I'm in a room with a TV, sometimes it's preferable to play it on the headset.
That's pretty crazy.
It's how you played mouthwashing, I remember, or not. It wasn't on the
yeah. That was unsettling.
Strapping that to your face seems like the wrong move.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I don't actually play that many VR games, like actually true, like immersive, like moving around. But I use it as like, what if I had a movie theater to play this game on? Kind of a lot.
You actually have a home theater in your house, so I don't know.
Yeah,
why you're.
That's pretty good too.
All right. Okay. I love the tech life that you're living, Raygan. I would like to tell you my making me happy this week, which I think is for a specific kind of gamer that may be listening. I have a book recommendation that is for people who really like stuff like Elden Ring. You know how that's full of weird freaks? I got a book that's full of weird freaks for you. So I absolutely fell in love with this book. It's a historical fiction horror novel called Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. It's been out for a little while. I think it came out like at least a decade ago, but this I had heard about it a little bit, and I am very glad I finally picked it up. This is a story that takes place in the Black Death, kind of in the 1300s, and it's about a knight who is a disgraced knight who's fallen on hard times and has become a bandit, and finds a young girl alone in this village. They're in 1300s France, and kind of she is this sort of hyper innocent, sort of creepy, mysterious child who tells him that the Black Death is only part of what's truly going on, which is a war between heaven and hell. And this really spirals. It starts off just sort of as a kind of a road story, but they pick up a collection of really interesting characters. The writing is truly great, especially in the realm of a horror novel, where a lot of them aren't going to be like, I have a higher tolerance for bad writing in horror than I do in some other things. This one really caught me. It's a combination of just really great, well-researched historical fiction. I've read a lot about the Black Death, and this really hit me as something that felt real and tangible, and had all the horror of that actual mass dying experience. It's just truly scary on its own. And then on top of that, slowly creeping into the story is this sort of unfolding monstrous evil that is kind of filling the world. And it's I really didn't know what to expect going into the book, and I won't spoil anything about later in the book where things get even weirder, but it's like, oh, they're making their way. God, the world has gone to shit, and the civilization has fallen apart. You're seeing all of the horror of that, and then they get to a town, and someone says, I need you to fight the thing in the river. What thing in the river? And it's like a giant fish with a hand for a tail crawls out of the river, and there's a huge fight, right? And so it's this great kind of back and forth between like realistic, grounded horror and huge monstrous freaks that continue to get more and more monstrous as you go through the book. So if you like horror, and I like, especially if you are a FromSoft fan, then this is a book for you to pick up.
Cool.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Short Game, especially Jason. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for letting us keep you up late. So this is it's always fun to get a guest on, and you're such a longtime friend of the show. So wonderful to finally get to chat with you like this. Listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at shortgame.fm. That's the website with all the links and buttons, and you can click on them and go to places. And there's many of those places include like the Patreon, where you can become a patron of the show. Join us on our Discord community where we chat about the show. We talk about the games that are upcoming, all of those things. Also, you can find us on all of the various podcast platforms and on YouTube. We've recently started dipping our toe into becoming a video program of sorts. So these episodes are being released on YouTube. We have the whole like back catalog on there, but it's mostly just audio. But now, if you want, you can see our faces for some reason. But some people tell us that is their preferred method, and we would love to have folks check us out there if that's what you like. So let's see. All of those places, leave us reviews, comments, all those sorts of things always helps. And of course, the Patreon, best way to support the show. Thank you again. I'm Raygan Kelly.
Lauren Ash.
Shane Kelly.
And Jason McIntosh. Had a wonderful, fun time being here. Thank you.
Thank you
so
for
much.
coming.
Thank you. And join us next week for another episode of The Short Game.